Thanks for joining us for Research That Matters, Sustainability, Biodiversity, and Justice in a Time of Ecological Crisis. This afternoon's panel conversation will focus on current research exploration by world-renowned scientists, artists, and emerging scholars. And we are calling this event Climate Change Across Disciplines. So excited to have you all here with us. We are streaming to YouTube Live from Fourth Space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands here in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. We'd like to extend our gratitude to the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation, who are the caretakers for the lands and waters we're meeting on, for their teachings about the earth and our relations. If you are new to this space, virtually or in person, once again, welcome. What do we do here? Well, we work with our university community to mobilize and exchange knowledge by co-creating daily activities. So it's our pleasure to have collaborated with organizers of this event and this week specifically. It's our pleasure to welcome in all of the speakers joining us today in person and on Zoom, and audience members for this conversation. And I will be passing it over to Leila for some opening words. Before doing so, I'll just let you know, folks, if you're in the space and you want to jump in during the question period, just let us know by raising a hand. We'll get a microphone to you so that those of us on Zoom can hear you in that space. And if you're on Zoom, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself, raise a hand, and we'll be able to call on you that way. Okay, over to you, Leila. Welcome in.
I'm just going to jump in here, Anna. This is Sarah Turner. Hi. I'm the co-director of the Loyola Sustainability Research Center, and I really want to welcome you all to this conference, which has been in the planning works for many months now. And I would like to specifically thank Rebecca Titler, who's been amazing at organizing this whole stream of events that started out conceptually as a couple of days and has now stretched into a week in 3 different venues with a lot of complicated and challenging logistics. And she's been doing a truly amazing and heroic job. So thank you, Rebecca. And thank you also to everyone in the Fourth Space for hosting this event and others this week. It's really wonderful. So welcome to this conference. If this is the first event that you've come to, we had one this morning, but there's a series of really great looking events all week that are coming up. Maybe you can. So here's our event for today right now. This is you here, but we also have tomorrow a really exciting in-person workshop and in Fourth Space, so also available online, with Dr. Renata Ferreira from Brazil. And she's going to be talking about her work with capuchin monkeys in captive reintroduction situations and looking at ecosystem restoration as a whole. We also have, as the second part of this series, which I'll allow Leila to introduce the series, but we have another panel on West Coast rainforest activist movements over the last 30 years or so. It's going to be really exciting. I'm personally very excited about this. This has good friends, colleagues, and family involved. So I'm looking forward to hosting this event tomorrow. We also are really lucky to have Rassim Khalifa, who's going to be giving a keynote address. I really encourage you to come. Rassim is a prof in biology here at Concordia, and he's done a lot of work on making science more equitable and more inclusive internationally and locally. And I think this is going to be a really excellent talk. So do come out. This is will be on March 15th from 4 to 5 p.m. And it's going to be here in Fourth Space, but also available online. And also just to say that this is a sustainable, we have sustainable event certification for this conference. And in particular, we'd like to ask you to turn off your camera and mic when you're not presenting or speaking and when the presentations are going on. And then if you've got a question and you would like to participate, please feel free to turn on your camera and mic for those times. But the rest of the time, leave them off. It makes a smaller footprint and also a smoother meeting. So. There's more information available on the website. And yeah, I think that is all. I am also really excited about this event in particular because, as Leila will tell you, these events have been years in the making of interdisciplinary work at Concordia, figuring out ways to communicate and come together. So I'll pass it over to you, Leila.
Thank you. I'm Leila Sujir, a professor and artist in the Studio Arts Department in the Faculty of Fine Arts. And as Sarah said, here's the meeting, the interdisciplinary. So welcome to the Climate Change Across the Disciplines panel. the first in a series of panels, screenings, walks, and workshops from Thinking Aloud that Sarah and Damon are also part of. It's public dissemination of research events presented by Elastic Spaces at Concordia University. We're grateful to our colleagues in geography, planning, and the environment, Damon Matthews and Sarah Turner, for locating these two panels within your conference, Research That Matters, Sustainability, Biodiversity, and Justice in a Time of Crisis. I'm also grateful to our team, Project Manager Santiago Tavera, Technical Director Jorge Zavano, Publications Gary Sangster and Helene Brousseau, and the Montreal team working with us, John Latour, Paul Landon, Hélène Courrier, and Giselle Trudel. The second panel, as Sarah said, is tomorrow for the Thinking Aloud series, West Coast Rainforest Activist Movements, Current Moments and Reflections on Decades of Activism. And it's the same place, fourth space, and the same Zoom link to find us. We will have, Thinking Aloud will have a series of panels coming up mid-June, Monday, June 12th through Friday, June 16th at fourth space and in person and hybrid with Zoom. And then continuing again Thursday, October 19th through Saturday, October 21st with fourth space, the Montreal Science Centre for an Artist IMAX commissions with Janine Marchessault, who is the curator, and artist walks and screenings at the Montreal Botanical Gardens. Thinking Aloud brings together a network of artists, curators, scientists, students, and community members coming with expertise from different disciplines and knowledge systems, artistic, scientific, Indigenous, to address urgent issues around social justice and the environment. Using both new and traditional practices, this group of interdisciplinary and intergenerational researchers work together towards delineation of the entangled problems of climate change, forest conservation, human displacement, settler colonialism, and racism. We are grateful to all the researchers and participants, our funders, SSHRC Connection, Concordia University, and our partners UQAM and Hexagram UQAM, University of Montreal, the Montreal Botanical Gardens, Queen's University, Emily Carr University of Art Plus Design, York University, Dundee University, and the Canadian Filmmakers Distribution Center. So thank you.
Now we'll pass it over to Damon.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction, everybody, and welcome to the panel. So my name is Damon Matthews, and I'm going to be presenting a little bit and also moderating the panel for today. So as Lila mentioned, this is part of the Thinking Aloud panel series, also one of the opening events of the Research That Matters conference, as Sarah articulated earlier. So just to quickly orient you to who is here. So I'm a professor in the Geography, Planning, and Environment Department at Concordia University. I'm a scientist by training. I work with climate models and interface with a lot of different issues in climate science related to how we understand the climate system to work and respond to the emissions that we're producing. I don't know if we have Marjorie. Perhaps Lila can give us an update. Marjorie is on the train currently and was going to be joining by Zoom, and it sounds like it may not work out, but we'll have an update on that. To my left, we have Alain Courrier, who's a writer and researcher based at the Montreal Botanical Gardens. On Zoom, we have Sonia and Dimo, who are an artistic duo, recent graduates of Concordia's MFA program. And then immediately next to me, Milton Raino, a climate change artist in residence at Redpath Museum, among other things. So we're going to begin. So I'll start with a short presentation, and then each of the panelists will present also about some of their work. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion and open it up to Q&A from the audience as well at that point. So my work is focused on the science of climate change, although what I want to show you first is sort of one of my early forays into artistic visualization of climate science data. And so this is the Climate Clock project that we launched 6 or 7 years ago now. And the idea of this clock was to visualize in a visceral way the progression of climate change and the progression towards the climate targets that the world has aimed for. And so we took 3 numbers, and these are numbers that I am very familiar with. The top number tells you the amount by which global temperatures have increased since the year 1850 or pre-industrial times. As of yesterday, when I took this video capture, we were at 1.269 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. The bottom is the primary driver of climate changes, and so this is the total amount of CO2 that has been emitted over the same period of time in tons. So this is about coming up on 2.5 trillion tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And then on the middle is the amount of time at the current progression of emissions and the resulting temperature change, the amount of time remaining until we reach the lower threshold of the Paris Agreement targets, which is 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial. So currently we're about 9 years out from that particular target, plus or minus some uncertainty, which is not at all displayed here. In fact, this is displayed with an interesting level of precision, shall we say. So this clock exists as a website. If you're interested, I invite you to go to climateclock.net. There's a competing climate clock called climateclock.world, which you can also check out if you would like. It shows a slightly different metric. That's the basis of their clock. We've also displayed this clock as a large-scale projection. This building is just over across the way to our left a little bit. This was an image from 2018, which is the last time we did a large-scale projection of the clock. And at that time, there were 15 years left. And so if you do the math, you realize that 15 minus 5 is not 9. We do update this clock every year corresponding to the latest estimates of global emissions and data that is available. And so the changes in the clock reflect both the passage of time and also the progression of scientific understanding. So I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the role of forests in the climate system. This is in many ways one of the themes of the Thinking Aloud series, and also is one of the themes of my own research. So what is shown here is the net uptake of greenhouse gases by the world's forests, and so this map is showing the amount by which the world's biospheres act as a buffer to the climate change that is currently occurring. About 1/3 of the emissions carbon dioxide emissions that we put into the atmosphere get absorbed by the world's forests, and so this is an extremely important moderating feedback in the climate system that slows the rate at which climate change would otherwise be changing. At the same time, humans are degrading the world's forests, and that is causing carbon that is stored in the biosphere to be released to the atmosphere. And so this map shows the inverse picture, which is the emissions that are produced by forests as a result of human activity, really around the world, concentrated in every major forest biome, realistically. If we look at the net effect of these two processes, the green here shows where the uptake of carbon by forests is larger, and the purple shows areas where the loss of carbon due to land use and disturbances is larger. And so you can see here that the places where large-scale deforestation is outpacing the uptake of carbon in forests is largely concentrated across the tropical forest biomes. So, the important role of forests and other ecosystems in the climate system is the basis of what is called nature-based climate solutions, which is the idea that if we developed a better relationship with the natural world and were able to steward natural ecosystems in a better way, that they could contribute towards meeting climate goals and enhancing the amount of carbon that is, reducing the amount of carbon that's lost and potentially enhancing the amount of carbon that is stored in land-based ecosystems. What's shown in this particular image is a very nice overview of the world of nature-based solutions, and down in the bottom left that is circled, carbon is really one of many features that are important of ecosystems, both across environmental and social axes. And so we can think of nature-based solutions for climate change as being one piece of a much larger set of benefits that humans accrue from natural systems. One thing that I've looked at a little bit in my own research is this idea of vulnerability to disturbance. And so one of the challenges of harnessing natural systems for climate mitigation is that the carbon that is stored there is unlikely to remain stored permanently. And one of the really problematic aspects of carbon offsets, for example, is the fact that we are offsetting a fossil fuel emission of CO2, which is a permanent addition of carbon to the atmosphere, with a withdrawal of carbon from the atmosphere into a tree or some other reservoir that is not permanent and is likely to be disturbed at some point in the future, either because of human activities themselves or potentially because of natural disturbances, which are also increasing as a result of climate change. And so one question that I've looked at from a modeling perspective is this one. What if the land carbon storage is not permanent, and does it still then have value as a climate mitigation solution? And I'll just give you the answer before I show you a couple of plots and then pass it off to one of the other panelists. So yes, and in the language of COVID, there is actually a really important role of nature in flattening the global warming curve. But the key thing is that it's not an alternative to fossil fuel mitigation. This must be done in addition to eliminating the use of fossil fuels and the emissions that they produce. So very quickly, these are the kind of images that we produce out of our modeling exercises. On the left is the couple of different scenarios of CO2 emissions. One where emissions increase for another several decades and then decrease slowly towards the end of the century, another where emissions decrease very rapidly. And the variants around this are scenarios where carbon is stored temporarily in the biosphere and then re-released back to the atmosphere. So this was explicitly designed to explore the climate response to a temporary storage of carbon. We use this as an input to an Earth system model and then produce trajectories of atmospheric CO2 and other variables that show the effect of that temporary storage. And so the key thing here is that in these two scenarios, one where emissions decrease very slowly and temperatures continue to increase, this is shown at the top, one where emissions decrease very rapidly and reach net zero around mid-century. In the latter scenario, the effect of temporary carbon is to decrease the temperature peak, and that's actually a very important contribution to climate mitigation. It's not a huge decrease. There's a limited capacity of natural systems to store carbon or to store more carbon than they already are storing. But this is an important flattening of the temperature peak in this particular scenario, which also includes very ambitious mitigation of fossil fuels. So just to conclude very quickly, this is the research conclusion. This temporary nature-based carbon storage can decrease peak warming, but again, only if coupled with very ambitious decreases in fossil fuel emissions. And so nature-based solutions are very important for lots of different reasons. Given that carbon storage could be temporary, the climate benefit also depends on eliminating other sources of CO2. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I think what we're going to do is run through the panelists' presentation, and then there'll be time for questions on any of the things that people say towards the end of the discussion. So I think I will stop there and I will pass it over perhaps to Alain. Would you like to go next? Just give me a second to reset the screen share. All right, whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Tunya Suritsi, welcome everyone. So I'm based at the Montreal Botanical Garden, and I've been working on climate change for a number of years now, probably over 15 years, mostly with the Inuit people, giving a voice to them, and that's what we did a couple of years ago when we published a book on the Inuit perception of climate change. And I'll give you a few slides on this and also relate not only their work and perception and their concerns, but also how art and land are so connected to their culture that is really important for them. And it's one way of expressing not only their concerns, or keeping their relationship with the forest or the tundra in that case. Next slide. So this is a little map rapidly of Nunavik, where I've been working since 2001, also on the Labrador coast. And for that, the book that I've showed, we also work with the communities in Nunavut. So all I would say over 150 interviews went in that books and a number of publications. Next. So Arctic, it's really a place where you can see changes happening very recently. Rapid growth and expansion of trees and shrubs, new plants, and I won't talk about everything because I'll be here until tomorrow. Willows are one of the culprit here. Although there's so many willows growing there, the tall and erect willows are really gaining and closing up the gaps that we see in the tundra. Dwarf birch is another one that is really creeping in and being more erect than it used to be. So next. So we can see here we also did some ecology and then using open-top chambers to mimic climate change and understanding how it will affect vegetations. Next. So any problems through climate change in those areas? Well, of course, for vegetation, obviously. Next. So berries are affected, lichens as well, which is also the food for the caribou, and obviously all the cultural activities linked to Inuit people. So that means fishing, hunting, gathering are more and more difficult for them. Next slide. So this is a picture that Lucas Sinapaluk sent me from Kainisujuaq one winter in 2008, and you can see the snowmobile runners being totally torn into pieces, and that's because the wind factor is so strong now that the snow is just pushed aside the hills, and there's not much snow on the ground, and it's hard for them to use their snowmobile in not almost next to the Hudson Bay, Detroit, the Detroit Strait. So that's a problem, and that's a funny way, that he sent it to me, but it's really a concern. So that's William Udluk, the late William Udluk from Kainisujuaq, so that's the Ungava Bay region. And Willie, when I asked him about climate change and this and that, he said, well, Alain, go in, and there's trees growing in that community. So there's black spruce and white spruce and also tamarack. And he said, go and cut those trees, and I just cut them. You'll see there's a funny thing. He said, there's kind of rings, and they're wider now. I said, I think it has to do with climate change. So actually, that's what we did. Next slide. Okay, yeah, that's the what he told us about. Look at the trees, and look how even the balsam poplar is gaining in terms of populations there, which is really not a tree that you find very often, that they use for smoking fish. And so Willie doesn't talk, he doesn't understand French or English. he barely looks at TV or anything like that. Just the fact that he's gathering food for when he go camping, and also as fuel. And he saw those changes. Next one is a student that actually, and with us, collected the trees and look at the growth ring, and we can see that the growth season is, it showed that the growth season is longer now. So Willie was totally right. Next slide. So through that, what climate change means for them is, will they be able to continue their cultural activities? How they see themselves as Inuit people? And I remember one young Inuk student that was working with me, and we were all around the table, and some elders from different communities said, we are a little bit afraid about mining and how it will affect the caribou. The meat will be able to eat those animals, or there will be, because it was a mine targeting radioactive components, and then they felt like, who am I if I can't eat tuk-tuk, caribou? And the young girl started to cry, said, who am I if I can't eat tuk-tuk nor paunyak, means berries? And because the berries are burnt on the land, and there's tundra fires, which was something almost unheard of. And so through art, and art is linked to the tundra. This is, and we'll see the plant in the next slide, but this is actually made from a plant growing there. And for them, it's really self-determination, keeping what they eat, what they do, and it's very much into what we know as a concept of resurgence, which is really important now for Indigenous people around the world. And this is really something that means a lot for them. And art is really a tool to express their concerns, but also who they are. Next slide. And this is another basket there. And if it's skate, it's the Inuktitut word for that grass, which they use. So gathering grass, going to the bush or the tundra, taking it home, transmitting how they do that with the younger generation. This is just the network, all the links that they have within their own communities that is so important. Next slide. So moksin is really important, and I have a proposal that I did with the Atikamekw artist to use the design that we see here from different communities and bring them together to talk about those patterns that we see, mostly flowers or animals, and that express their connection to plants, the land, animals, and what we call in our own discipline, cultural keystone species here. Next slide. So Yaka Yaka, a late Yaka Yaka, who was a friend of mine, and he was doing ulu, the woman's knife that we can see behind him, and those are still very useful for these people. Next slide. So mental health issues. Well, climate change, and there's been a number of publications on this, climate change will just exacerbate mental health issues in those remote communities. And through art, through reconnecting to the land, and that's what I heard so many times, some of the Inuit people said to me, when I don't feel well, I just go out of the community. I go to the land, I go to my cabin, and I stay there by myself for a number of days. So this is a carving by my friend Daniel Ananak. Next slide. So those are basket from Odanak. And again, they come from the black ash tree. They come from sweetgrass. So like, and this is all connected to a healing component. This is so important. That's why art is connecting everything together, and you know, the place, the land. So, and even their stories. So I think that's the last slide I had to show up. Yeah, Nakomi Mareluk, thank you for having me.
Great, thank you, Alain. So I forgot to properly introduce Alain. I think you haven't got a sense of his work, but just, you know, he's a researcher at the Montreal Botanical Gardens, PhD from UDM, including a term at Harvard and a number of accolades. And so I would invite you to check out his bio and also ask questions at the end if you have anything. So next we'll go to Milton on my left. And so Milton is a Columbia new media artist with a background in engineering and geography. And his works are an exploration of the role of new media technologies in our perception of time and space. Milton creates live performances and interactive installations that integrate light, sound, sensors, programming, animation, video, and real-time data processing. He's performed and exhibited his work in Colombia and in Canada. Milton holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, a specialization in spatial analysis from the National University of Columbia, and a specialization in fine arts and creative technologies from the University of Montreal. And he was also the first recipient of the Climate Change Artist in Residence program by the Red Path Museum, which he currently holds. So thank you for joining us. And once again, just give me half a second to put up your PowerPoint, and then we can get started. Yeah, pass that to you.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. So today I'm talking about this project. This is the result of a one-year residency at the Red Path Museum. And it was a very special project because the Red Path Museum is a nature science museum. And it was the first time they were hosting an artist in residency program. McGill University already has different artist in residency programs, but this was the first that was focused on art and especially technology as well. One of the main purposes of this residency was to use new media art as a tool to show the research that's being done in climate change in McGill University, but also to integrate like students, staff, all the community around McGill, and to learn about these issues. And a little bit of context. So as I was mentioning, I joined this residency in January 2021. And this residency was also created by a program at McGill. They have this department called the Adaptable Air Observation System. Basically what they do is they do models of the Earth based on data that they collect. So but that time they have just started a new project in which they have been installing Sentinels, climate sentinels over stations, you see in the picture on the right. And these Sentinels are equipped with lots of sensors, like to measure humidity, temperature, precipitation, whatever you can imagine, you can measure with these sensors. And but this time they want to create like a network of sensors to measure the changes on the Saint Laurent River. And by this time, only one of the sensors was operating. Was the sensor located in the Gold Reserve, Mont Saint-Hilaire. So basically, like, you know, because of COVID and everything that was happening around the world, 2021 was basically almost virtual. So this is what my residency space looked like most of the time. Just watching through the feedback of the camera, like what's going on with the Sentinel station. And I started noticing like some changes. Like for example, you have all this technology and sensors installed, but then you have to access like a computer and take a data to see like it rained But you can see, like, for example, when it rains, the rocks that surround the station become darker. So they are like a biosensor, to say something like that. And I choose this capture from, this is what the station looked like in 2020 and 2022, this same day. So after 1 year and almost like 3 months more, we ended up with this exhibition. This is located at the Red Plant Museum. If you haven't visited, it looks like this. This is the second floor. And this area of the museum is dedicated to Quebec. So, for example, there is in the middle, there is like this area about the minerals of Quebec and the biodiversity of the area. And what I installed for this exhibition is you see this cloud-like thing in the middle. It's a kinetic sculpture. I also received 3 windows. So you see like little dots from its terrain. And I have one of the screens. I'm gonna show you more in detail that. I wanted to mention that really the center of this project became the duckweed. So when I was in front of this, like I'm used to working with a lot of data usually, but I wasn't expecting the amount of data that was coming up from this station. Like they capture every minute for 20 different sensors. You have, it's an amount that it's very hard to manage. Somehow I was trying to find like a connection with this area. Like I mentioned the Mont Saint-Hilaire, and I started like just, for example, seeing through Google Maps and reading like what was published like many years ago. And then I found this little plant called duckweed. The scientific name is Lemna minor. This is the species that I found here in the Lake Hertel. And this plant is very curious because like you have 2 polarized ideas about this plant. For some people, it's a pest. Like if you search on the internet, you will see people just like trying to find how to get rid of duckweed. Like I'm getting crazy with duckweed. It's covering all my pond and my aquarium. And the other side of the story is people researching like the potential of duckweed for purification of water, for example, for feed chicken and cows, or even for feed as a human source of food. So I really like this ambivalence of this plant. And like I have here some keywords. So we have the sensors that were in the station, but also like duckweed is used like by Environment Canada. It's used as a biosensor. They sometimes take water from a source and they put duckweed, and they just wait and see how duckweed reacts. And because duckweed is so good at reacting at the environment, they just see if the water has a good quality or not. And also, like I wanted to like give a place of information, wanted to make this information more accessible. Yeah, let's pass to the next. So the 2 pieces, the first one I call Magic Mirror, is the one that looked like a cloud. It's a kinetic sculpture that you can use to navigate through different vertical levels of a landscape without never landing, like you're always floating. And the different layers, let's see here. I'm gonna take you through a ride. We start inside the duckweed. So this is like, we don't know what it looks like if they think, how they think, like what they feel. So this is the inside. And then you start like rising the level of the sculpture. And you arrive to a layer of the, like plants have these little openings called stoma, or stomata in plural, through which they exchange with the environment. So through these little pores, they exchange. For example, they take the carbon dioxide from the environment, and then they release oxygen. So this is like a microscopic view. We are still, and then if you zoom out, we are in the surface of the plant. So this plant is really small. It it can feel in my like in the tip of my finger. And that was one of the reasons that it became a lot of popular in research, because scientists figured out that they could take this little plant and do experiments with them because they don't took a lot of space. Here is in the surface of the lake. So this sculpture, it has like 1 year data, a cycle of data. So depending on the time that you arrive at the museum, you might find like different, like for example, during winter, a duckweed goes to the bottom of the lake. They just enter a different state and they go to the bottom to hibernate. And then the next spring, they go back to the surface. So this is what the Mont Saint-Hilaire looks like. This was, you also see like, there is like the middle in the lake, and on the north there is a scar. It's a quarry from which they usually extract minerals. Then we have the like the air also, and all that stuff here is the moon or the sun. So basically, what I'm doing here is collecting data from different parts. For example, there's satellites from NASA observatories, and putting them together in one single like place. Oh, this is the moon. What you see on the right, it's for the other. So the first one was called Magic Mirror. The second one was Time Machine, in which I give access to people to the feedback from the station. So there's like this, you have a filter, and then you can say, for example, I want to see what the summer looked like in 2021 from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. You can go to very specific times of the day. And I have this on the right, this animation of, it's actually by a French illustrator called Edmond Dulac. And the original version of it, it's like this, it's called Father Time. So this guy holding a flask, and inside the flask was a fairy. So I really like this idea of, there was this contrast of duckweed on the left in the piece of Magic Mirror, just floating, doing what they do, providing shelter and support to different species. And then the other side of the story, the duckweed inside a laboratory, let's say, under some kind of experiment, I don't know. And this animation also reacts to the different time that you're trying to consult. So yeah, I also forgot to mention, but this sculpture is also nourished with data from the herbarium, McGill Herbarium. They did some surveys in like 1960, where they collected the different species of plants that were found in the mountain. So we took with some student volunteers like 200 of those samples and put them in the sculpture. So depending on the time of the day or the interaction that you have with this, you can discover a different species. And oops, oh yeah. This is the last slide that I have. So thank you for your time. In case you're interested in seeing this exhibition, it's you can visit the Red Pad Museum. It's close by, and it's usually open from Tuesday to Friday from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. That's all. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Milton. So we'll move to our last presenters who are on Zoom. So while they get themselves set up, I'll just briefly introduce them. So this is Sonia Stoeva and Dimo Ivanov, who are an artistic duo. So their collaborative work took shape in 2010 as the duo goes by the name Ivano Stoeva, following projects in Canada and Europe. In 2022, they completed a Studio Arts MFA in Intermedia, Video Performance and Electronic Arts at Concordia University. Dimo received a fellowship also from the Leadership in Environmental Digital Innovation for Sustainability program, the LEADS program, though Sonia also participated alongside Dimo in that experience. Their research has also received the support of several scholarships and bursaries from the Canada Council, the CALQ, the Ville de Montréal, FRQSC via Master's Research Scholarships, and the Hexagram Network Research and Creation Grant. They have exhibited in galleries and art centers in Chicoutimi, Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Paris, and Sofia, as well as an art festival such as the Electra International Digital Art Festival and the Art Souterrain Contemporary Art Festival. So I will turn it over to you, Dimo and Sonia, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Damon.
And thank you for inviting us. We're sorry that we're having a little bit of problem with this blur, but anyway, you're going to see actually our slideshow. So
Yeah.
there is no.
Let me just pull it up. So we're gonna talk a little bit about a presentation we did about this last spring.
Yes, we finished, as Damon said, our studies in the intermediate program at Concordia University. Actually, we graduated last year. And during our research, we've been experimenting a lot with light, movement, and in order to simulate natural systems. We examine movement, light, and sound to better understand how those elements integrated in an artwork can influence our perception of nature, or they could actually inform us to its state. We started research around use of technologies such as programming, simple motors, and light in order to kind of more animate the art piece. To also create an illusion of movement, illusion on the image, which you're going to see during the presentation. So what we are seeing on the first slide, it's our solo exhibition that we did last spring, which was part also of our thesis. We presented this exhibition and another project at Concordia building.
So we kind of wanted to address those new components that we have integrated in our work in order to address some questions that they raised around the usage of technology regarding towards nature. So they spark like, how do we integrate concrete information around climate and around how the landscape is going to look. So we wanted to convey scientific research as our colleague panelists did, just work with some information that is gathered already by some complex systems that are in place by universities and all sorts of governmental institutions. So we were what are the implications of the constructing nature through technology, and what does that reveal about our relationship with nature? What was the questions, and what is the best way to replicate this experience in the future? What are the elements in our creations that convey and determine emotion, and how do they relate to an art object that simulates natural elements through technology? Because there were several throughout our program with LEEDS, we understood that there was a big need around the communication of science, climate science, and there was a big need to kind of address on a more emotional level these questions around the climate crisis and how to kind of deal with the situation. So in that manner,
our research turns more towards environmental preoccupations as creating work that engages around themes. These themes has to reflect to the present climate crisis. We wanted to bridge science and society using the artistic language, if this is possible, and also using digital technology through the use of sculptural interventions and by the use of mechanics and 3D simulations. So the exhibition, which we are going to see, which we are seeing actually, brings to life the research that we have carried out in collaboration with climate change experts, and it presents multi-sensory works such as videos, photography, installation, and 3D simulations. You go ahead.
Yeah, we have addressed on several levels the climate kind of question around this exhibition, because we wanted to address how this landscape is going to look in the future, how we can maybe use technology to kind of archive some elements of nature and maybe bring attention to those elements in order to move people on a more emotional or deeper level, as some artworks can have this possibility of moving us through our body and through our emotions. And another way was to address, and sometimes at some level, this kind of anxiety we might have around climate and how to address and take kind of action. So we have three, there's photographs, there's four photographs which represent the future. There is a future kind of interpretation of what we think might look, the landscape might look like. There is 3 videos which are interviews with climate scientists and experts around the climate actions are taken on a government level, or more be a higher kind of level, and on a
governmental level.
Yeah, governmental level. And we have some activists who are addressing climate as a activist approach, more community-based approach. We don't have those videos to share because they're too long, but they're kind of 25 minutes each video. But they do address those elements on a more kind of global approach. And we do have concrete like actions that could be taken towards like cleaning up the Saint Lawrence banks. So just to get back to the project, we were the sculptures represented are replicas of pieces of ice found on the Saint Lawrence River bank in multiple locations throughout Quebec. Using 3D modeling software and photogrammetry, we reproduced the exact and very delicate shapes of the ice blocks in order to achieve these replicas of ice. So if you see on this slide, you can see in the center there is a piece of ice which is the real ice, which is kind of blurred, and you have the replicated ice, which is 3D modeled through photogrammetry, the same piece of ice, and printed in a 3D printer. So on the other hand, the surrounding landscape of each piece of ice is presented by 2 simulation techniques, the photographs and the 3D video. These works are based on scientific data that were taken from several sources. The one source that we used for these photographs is Climate Central. So a little bit about them. Climate Central is a non-profit news organization that analyzes and reports on climate science. composed of scientists and science journalists that conduct scientific research and climate change on climate change and emergency issues. Climate Central uses science, big data, and technology to generate thousands of local stories and compelling visuals that makes climate change personal and shows what can be done about it. So these pictures, our interpretation of the landscape here is a photo taken from the Les Îles de Boucherville, and we took the map from Climate Central, and we have those that data that is kind of simulated through images. So we went on site and we took the picture from where Climate Central was suggesting that there will be a loss in the islands because of the sea rise, surging seas. So because of melting of the ice in the Arctic. And so
as we can see here, we have for 2 degrees or 4 degrees
scenarios,
scenario. So we're going to lose some of our islands actually close to Montreal, and this is the series of photography that is presenting. So the first one, as Dimo says, it's Île de Boucherville. We also have this one, which is the place is Île de Contrecoeur, which is a little bit more further from Montreal. And something that we didn't mention actually, you're seeing the horizon here, and in kind of a blurry lines. So what we're kind of suggesting visually, it's how the water is going to cover those islands, and they're going to disappear. So we're not seeing them very well because of the surging,
So the shift in the horizon. So it's the ideas of levels kind of moving and in prediction of what might look like in the future. So sorry,
this is no, go ahead. This is the series actually, and we are also seeing the 3D printed sculptures that we integrated again in the photographs. We actually changed for some of them we changed the size. So this one you can see it in much bigger size that it was actually in real size, found it on the banks of the river. Here are actually the sculptures that we present. So you're seeing the real size of the ice pieces that we took. During this research, something that was really exciting for us was that we found this technology of I'm not able to pronounce it.
The photogrammetry?
Photogrammetry, thank you. Because it was kind of difficult actually to scan a 3D object on a riverbank. So this technology helped us to
archive this ice, and for us it was a way to address and kind of focus the attention of the viewers towards elements that are in constant change, and ice is one of the represents at the same time the melting, but at the same time this element of beauty which can move us on a deeper level. So we have we have those elements we've created. Here's a close-up of one of the ice pieces that were reproduced. And
the sculptures also were really detailed, what was really interesting, because you can see the surface, how plays with light, the surface of the ice. And because of that, yeah, it was pretty exciting for us to see how this technology works well in more kind of remote places, because as I said, we cannot go with a 3D scanner there, but only with this technology we can go and
Yeah, and
scan everything.
this is why we called it mémoire de glace, the memory of ice, because it's kind of taking a particular moment in time and space and reproducing it in something which is more more kind of durable, let's say, from cornstarch and PLA filament, but something that is, yeah, it's kind of a archive of this moment. So it was important to us to stop a moment, have the future presentation with the photos, and have another installation which we're gonna go over here, which Sonia might talk about it.
Yeah, so this installation it was kind of the main piece in the space. It's called Manufactured Nature, and it considers visual and conceptual systems as constructions of new realities. So we used different components, which we designed a cybernetic utopian landscape where nature is simulated by mechanical means. The composition features a next generation vision of nature as a robotic nature, as we can say. The humanization of movement in the landscape causes similarities with natural phenomena such as moving landscape or a cloud passing from light to dark. Maybe we can play the video also, because it's going to be much more understandable, kind of. This one.
Can we, okay, just a second.
So for this work, again, we were working on kind of creating an illusion by simple means like material and light. The material that we were using here, I'm sorry, it's
the emergency blanket.
Thank you. Which is kind of a well reflecting light, and it's kind of aluminum finish. We have also, as you can see, two lights, one at the bottom and one at the top of the installation. And those metal plates that are moving because of the simple motors. They're blocking, or they're letting light go through, and because of that, the cloud changes dark to light. So as we were using this kind of a simple technological means, we were trying to recreate again some kind of a experience in nature, and see if is it possible actually to have the same experience looking at the real nature or the nature created by humans. What is the difference between those two experiences?
And I think we really focused on the difficult kind of task of creating something, but at the same time having it use very energy demanding materials, but at the same time talking about about climate and maybe a little bit of our apprehension of future and of nature in the future. So how does those elements combine in a experience in a gallery? So using those materials was kind of a contradictory, but at the same time it gives this position of uncomfort, at the same time of beauty, which was kind of pulling you in. So this paradox was created with this piece, which art can make, and which art has the liberty to address and work with. So we decided that this should be a large piece. So you can see it's a life-size piece, and every time we install it, the elements inside change, because it's really a reflection on materials inside of this box, white box, and it really creates every time a new experience, a new image. Yeah. So
and I don't know how much time we have.
The last video we wanted to actually address is the one we made with the help of no, it's this one, sorry.
Okay.
With
Jarmark Polowska.
Yeah, a programmer which worked with us to kind of present.
It's a 3D modeling video, 3D modeling of a video based on data disseminated by the Global Observatory of the St. Lawrence River in conjunction with Canadian Ice Surface and National Snow and Ice Data Center. So what we are seeing here, it's actually the representation of the data of the ice covering on St. Lawrence River between 2013 and 2019. So this is the data which actually we managed to have. The video, even though it's based on real data, doesn't inform perfectly on the quality of the exact quantity of the ice, but guide us more like towards a poetic fiction of the travel of ice. So we are having this ice piece that it was kind of a main actor in our exhibition, and we're presenting it as a fiction, how it travels in the St. Lawrence River. This is the bottom image, or the image that we have on the top. It's the covering of ice during the.
It's the real data that we managed to cover to express in a kind of a more abstract image. And actually the darkness of the more light is the image in the the wider the image, the denser the thickness of the ice, and the more paler kind of image which appears on the second part is the thinner ice which is presented from the data. So we kind of combine those four elements to give an overall representation of what we managed to kind of deal and use technology in order to help us, but in order to give us maybe a glimpse to the future, even though we base ourselves from ideas that are been captured from 2013 and 2019 data that is past. So all those elements kind of played into what we were thinking for this exhibition, and we thank you for the time.
Thank you, Sonia and Dimo. So that's it for our panel presentations. Thank you, everybody. I think, given the time, I think I might just open the floor for questions. If anyone would like to ask anything of the panelists, rather than us speaking more for the moment. But if anyone has any questions in the room, just put up your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you. If you're on Zoom and would like to say something, I would invite you to unmute yourself and go ahead. Or if you put the question in the chat, I can relay it to the appropriate panelist. Yes?
Is that me? Can you hear me?
No?
No. I can take this off. Does that work?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. I'm sorry to dominate by taking the first question, but I'm so interested by the input of our artists here. And as a scientist, I'm really interested in the role of the arts. And I'm wondering how you see your main role. You talked about being archivists. Do you see your main role as being that archivists recording what's current and soon to be past, or as educating people on what's going on, or as inspiring people, or where's the balance for you in that for both of our artist teams here?
Do you want to have a go at it first, and then we can pass it to...
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, that's something that I thought a lot during my residency, because, when you're dealing with an issue as climate change, you have to kind of choose a position. Do you want to believe in climate change? Do you want to take action? Do you want to focus on the solutions or the issues? So I think the work as an artist is, especially working with the scientific issues, is kind of similar to the role of a translator. So you're immersing yourself in some kind of different information, and you're trying to translate this information to a different kind of audience. And also something that I discovered during this residency, where apart from the exhibition, we did a lot of workshops throughout the year. And we even did an exhibition, an art and science exhibition, in which scientists from McGill, students, staff, they all presented artist projects. So I think this kind of barrier, wall between being an artist and being a scientist, is kind of not so defined. We both get obsessed with different things and try to find more and more and to understand our environment.
Sonia or Dimo, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think we can, I agree, definitely. The lines are blurred, and I think one of the more interesting is how we can really translate these emotions and how we choose to do it. I think that archiving is part of it because we kind of focus on a particular element and really turn all the attention to the viewer towards what we were focusing, and kind of get them to be part of your reflections around archiving and around what is the situation at this present moment, what could be and what has been. So it's kind of I think very interesting way to address science, and to kind of let art have the liberty of expressing a little bit more then a little bit more freely, like the ideas around how the future may shape up, or how some things are evolving right now in nature. So I think that in the question there is the answer, because we do have an archive of power, and we do have like a more kind of addressing power to address this a certain subject in its presentation. So I think overall these elements blend in like I do right now.
Yeah, I think what is really powerful about art, it's translating emotion. If we can translate emotion to the viewer, and we can give them a different sensation of what we're kind of having right now, all of this information, which is pretty alarming about climate change. Our role, I would say, with me and Dimo was also kind of to bring the attention to the viewer about the beauty of nature, and about how it is important to preserve it. So yeah, I think all of those elements, they really goes all together.
I actually have a follow-up question on that the question of emotion, Sonia, that you were just speaking about. I mean, my limited experience with artistic visualization via the climate clock, I mean, it was designed to evoke a response, but you know, after observing people's responses over several years, the main response is typically dismay or anxiety or fear, and so I mean, I wonder if you have thoughts on, you know, what emotions are most productive to try to evoke. You know, if your intent is to, you know, initiate, you know, action or change. Yeah, I'm not sure anxiety is really the best motivator of action.
Yeah, we completely agree with this, and actually because of that we had these 3 interviews with climate experts, biologists, and climate activists, because it's really interesting to see their point of view, because actually they're pretty hopeful. They think the future is going to be different, but maybe not so dark that we think. And I think it's important to give this little hope to the public, to our society, in order to act, because when we are so kind of stressed, and we have this anxiety, we're thinking that actually we cannot do anything because it's too big, we cannot help, but giving them just some ideas, some little actions, and presenting them that, yeah, the future, the nature is changing. We're basically all saying it, and we cannot escape of this. And it's going to be different for the next generations, but maybe we have a little hope, and maybe it's going to be different, but not so destroyed.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the 3 videos we had, the main point was action. You just have to do every day some things that you think they count, and that is the way to escape from this negative thoughts and anxiety kind of that can build up. So everyday little things, actions are all counts. Everything counts. So.
Any other questions from the audience or from our Zoom audience?
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your work. My question has more to do with the art creation process. And I really appreciate that you incorporated and emphasized the temporality of these issues and showing, past and present and how they're sort of like immersing within each other, and also trying to bring together all the information that seems so abstract, like climate data, and trying to make it more concrete. I was wondering, in terms of like sort of engaging with the viscerality of the issues, aside from the visual and tactile aspect, do you find any value in incorporating the other like senses involved in experiencing, climate change?
Thank you for the question. So there is one word that I learned at the beginning of the residency when I was trying to go away from this all I don't know, but since I was born, all the media is taking us towards a very negative vision of reality and the future and everything. Like I come from Colombia, and then you have like this general idea that everybody's dangerous and you cannot trust the people that live close to you. So I think this kind of visions kind of contribute to people being apart from each other and not collaborating. And there is something, the word that I learned was umwelt. It's like the experience we have of the world, of the landscape and everything is mediated by our senses. So basically when we're experiencing the landscape, we are doing a translation process, like a decoding process. Through our senses, we are feeling, listening, hearing, and then this information might have some meaning or not for us. And I think most of these discussions are very anthropocentric, but for example, in my case, I wanted to give also like a voice to other beings that are also experiencing the landscape, and they might have different licenses through which they relate to each other. So I think also all culture is very visual based. Like most of our communications are through visual images, like we have logos, we have all these kind of things. And we are kind of letting behind, for example, hearing, which is a very immersive and important sense. And there is a whole branch of called ecoacoustics that try to use like the sense of hearing to connect people with, like for example, they call like different beings produce signals, and then through hearing you can process those signals and understand the landscape differently. So I think it's very important to awake other senses and not be so like focus on the eyes.
Ella, I just wanted to invite you to comment if you would like on this question. I mean, you're coming from a more scientific perspective, but also, examples of art showed up in your presentation as well. What do you think of this kind of interface of art and science, and how that connects to the indigenous worldviews also that you were speaking about?
Well, the example that I gave, and art that comes mostly from the indigenous people that I'm working with, are actually more a way to suppress anxiety than to show anxiety. There's a number of artists that will show climate change or what they went through residential school, for example. But I saw a lot of those artists using that to alleviate and also to communicate, what's going on at a personal, but also a really collective. As indigenous people are really collective, the community is really like a network. So this is really important for them. They've done that. They'll continue to do that. And as I said, is a connection. So what's wrong, goes all the way back to the land and how it will be affected by climate change. So they feel the urgency of moving forward and reaching adaptations and resiliency, but at the same time, they need that to feel and suppress and be well. What's interesting is I'm also a poet, so I'm also a writer, and I've done. One of my friends decided that the Montreal Botanical Garden that we would read about environmental issues, and we would actually write poems and read them with musicians, and it was awkward a little bit for me because it's not something I do. I do that for my work, not as an artist or a writer. So combining the two was kind of a bit of a challenge for me to actually put into words what I know, what I'm working, what I'm doing as a researcher was kind of really a difficult path. I don't know, if artists are, but it's I don't know why, but it's I did it, and I supported my friend, but it was a really hard way to go forward.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Art as it's a way of articulating the connection with things, but also a way of in a sense an adaptation strategy itself as a way of dealing with changes that are going on around us. Would anyone else like to add a comment or question? Yes, please.
Yeah, I was wondering, I think it's come up maybe from all of the panelists, but this sense of collaboration, the idea of collaboration to discussing these kind of issues, and collaborating not just as a duo like Sonia and Dimo and with other scientists as well, but also within a community and how we communicate with nature, which I think Milton was starting to mention a bit, the sense of I guess building community and collaborating with different elements, different people in different disciplines as well. So I was curious to hear from the panelists a bit of how this role of collaboration, of building community, how that's part of their methodology, their practice, and how they see that importance in discussing these kind of issues of climate change and environmental changes. Yes.
Would anyone like to take a go at that?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So one of the things I forgot to mention was one of the visions that helped me to deal with this, like you have the opposite to the anxiety. It's there is this Australian writer called Glenn Albrecht. He has this book called Air Emotions, in which he narrates how the landscape changed in Australia and how he was feeling this kind of sentiment, and he wanted to give a name to this feeling that he was experiencing. And so he creates like a whole vocabulary of, for example, he has the name solastalgia, and he says, this is the nostalgia you feel when you are at the place and this place is changing conditions and you cannot do anything about it. But it also has like a name called eutheria, so it's like the love for the air. And there was a passage in this book, I don't remember it was this book especially, but they talk about like, well, I don't know if it was this book, but they say that like all this, like the landscape is a process, is the result of different relationships between different species built over deep time. So this notion of deep time, like a collaboration that is not like something that happens in a moment, but like it needs to be for a life, like it needs to keep evolving and evolving and evolving to have a meaningful impact. In my case, I was lucky that I had like the support of the Red Pine Museum, for example. They have student volunteer programs in which different students just volunteer to help in different projects, and lots of them came to this project to help with the like workshops. We did even for preparing data for these sculptures. So, like, I think maybe like the biggest challenge here is how to maintain these collaborations to a point that they have a meaningful impact and not just momentary and sporadic.
That's really interesting, the idea of deep time collaborations in nature, which evolve and develop over millennia, really. I mean, I think one of the challenges that I face as a academic and a scientist is creating the time for any collaborations, let alone deep time collaborations. And whereas those are actually the collaborations that are the most meaningful and the most effective at kind of moving change forward. Were you going to add something?
Well, yeah, well, that's the challenge is really, for me, could be a problem. And I give just an example. I have another group of that I'm in, but they're focusing on writing, and you know, they're writers, and so when I spoke about the project with all my team, the researcher where I work and my boss and everything, I got, well, that's not something you can do. That's not research. So coming up with with Iruoma doing a project with me and taking time off, to do that art form where I can, of course, bring science, but also, be part of the art process is kind of shaky. And some will support me, but some will not support me in the scientific world. And this is, although we speak a lot about intersectorial research, I see the problems, and this is, I don't know what to do with that, but I said, well, I'll do it nonetheless, but I'm in kind of a bad situation. And yeah, so it's even just publishing books in my field has not the same impact that publishing books in art or social sciences, and that's, I've done a number of books, but I barely had somebody clapping my back and say, hey, nice job. So it's really hard, and although I want to do it, and I'm sure that once the process and everything is, like the exhibition or whatever is happening, all the feedback that will come from that will be well received by by the city of Montreal where I work, and the researcher. But all the process, I might have some bad comments on what I'm doing. Losing my time instead of doing science and research.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we're collaborating
all the
all the time, yeah, as artists. So collaboration for us, it's for me and for Dimo, I think also it's the key of everything, because it gives another point of view, because sometimes when you're working on a project, you can go so much in one direction. But bringing other opinions, other knowledge, really can shift your work in a, I would say, better direction, and it can open your knowledge and your actually techniques and everything. So yeah, definitely collaboration should be something that we experiment with more and more, and not be afraid of different disciplines on different different arts, or
yeah, the three videos we didn't show, and I talk about them a lot. They're the main part of outside collaboration, going towards scientifics, and so we had Bessam Bouagila from Environment Canada in climate change. We had Jacinthe Gaumont-Clavé from Hydro-Québec, the Department of Adapting to Climate Change. And then we had Solon, which is a local initiative towards action towards climate change. And we had
Anne-Marie Asselin, which she is a biologist.
From Organisation Bleue. They're cleaning up the St. Lawrence River and delivering information around plastic pollution. So we kind of reach all across, and these collaborations really took us, I think, personally, and Sonia too, I think we got us really thinking about how every aspect of our project and how to address like reparations and how to do actions. And I think actually those two collaborations and those interviews, they gave us a little bit actually more hope than we had like around the issue. They really were explaining it at the same time talking about the solutions that are taking place right now. So I think this is why collaboration is fun, because it always brings you another kind of point of view and really pushes you towards continuing and changing path maybe sometimes when you're a little bit lost. So well, for us it's important for sure. It's the beginning of more collaborations.
Maybe time for one more question, if there is one from the audience. There haven't been any questions on Zoom yet. I've been keeping an eye out. Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I took this conference a bit late, so I'm sorry if ever my comment is a bit hors champ. I'm wondering, in the collaborations, artistic and scientific, have there been moments where, as a scientist, the input from artists has reframed the scope of projects, for example? And inversely, also for artists, where the input of, for example, the scientific collaborator has been taken into account to be able to maybe give more just interpretation to the data that's being used. So has the exchange between the collaborations really generated different conversations that brought the work in different bounds for each one? So where the scientist sees really like the subject differently in light of the artist and inversely.
Yeah, so this is a question I have been asked before, like, there is the, I don't know if that happens to you, but there is usually like a more one-sided kind of collaboration in these kind of projects. Like usually scientists are very busy. They have no time for and even less to reframe completely a project. Maybe like, I was asked about the impact I thought my project was having in the scientist. And I don't think it's going to have like an immediate impact. I don't think they're going to change the ways they're doing things just because I'm showing the plant floating in the water. But I think this is more meaningful when you have scientists that have an artist's heart. Like, for example, as I mentioned, some of the artists that participated in this project as volunteers, they were scientists, but they take art as a way to structure their projects. So I think this is maybe some kind of education, and I don't know. But in my case, it has been a little bit like one-sided when you have to deal with the scientist.
I might take this opportunity to apologize on behalf of all scientists. I am also guilty of not being very responsive to inquiries. And I mean, I don't know if it's a problem of science or a problem of academics more broadly. I think the academic world is very difficult to navigate, and it's very difficult to know where where the interesting things will come from. I mean, I think that is changing a little bit, and in my personal experience, it is, whether with artists or experts from other venues of society. I mean, it is often the case that those conversations is what leads to really interesting ideas and interesting things that can then turn into research projects. But it's it takes time to navigate those relationships and to build those relationships to the point where the interesting conversations that lead to generative ideas can take place. And time is probably the one thing that we don't have in many lines of work, but particularly in academia, and it's a real challenge.
Just to add to that, and I agree, I don't, what changed to me is working with the people, and these people, a lot of them are artists, and it's not that it changed the way I'm doing science, because I'm in between chairs. People, they don't like, nobody likes me because I'm not a biologist anymore. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a health scientist. So I get rejected pretty easily. And when I do a grant proposal, I'm the easy person. Just he's not. Yeah, no. But working with people obviously changed the way I'm doing research. And the only thing that arts came into my world is that I saw the potential to do to have those artists to be well, I wouldn't say known, but to participate in terms of, I asked people to draw plans for me and use those for my books. And I have a project that I need to wrap up, and it's an artist that came with me. I told him, I was asking him because he was a elder, and I said, you should come and be there at the conference on climate change. And he was there. There was two Inuit people, and I saw him back, not talking, but he drew all the time. He drew whatever he heard, and it was amazing. I said, okay, we need to do something with that. And so there's something about the Inuit calendar that I need to wrap up, and he's going to be a huge part of that. But changing my way, not exactly, no.
Sonia, would you like to add anything, or Dimo? Sorry, Dimo's in the blur at the moment.
Always like one or two. I think for us, this project was, mainly we initiated it, and we brought people on, asked around who was interested in participate in this, just give us their feedback or concrete information about the situation right now, and from people who are working in the field. So it was important for us, I think, to kind of validate where we are going and if we are on the right path, because for artists sometimes it might be too kind of abstract. Climate change, it's enormous, it's big, for everybody it's difficult to tackle, and where do we start? I think we used those interviews, and we used data because there was some anchoring points that from there we could kind of leap, and maybe have the artistic freedom and kind of go towards directions which are creative. But I think, for us, it was, we really, working with nature for several years, a representation of nature was important to kind of get back to some scientific and more kind of concrete information. So,
and I would say also that it was our really a personal questioning that we start with at the beginning, because this anxiety, it's just going in like such a humongous amount, and we can see it in the next generations, in actually younger generations that are not supposed to know so much, but they know too much about climate change and how they cannot deal with it. And I think it's because of this, art could be in help here, using and translating scientific knowledge, just because it could make the things a little bit more, I would say, lighter and understandable, and could maybe reach a little bit more a larger public. And I think this should be the goal of everything, because this is the idea, to kind of reach as much as possible people and make them think about something or reflect on something or questioning for something. We're not giving them answers. As always, as researchers, we are questioning for things, for questions, and trying to see what are our options, and what is the best direction that we should go. But I would say also that it's not an easy task to do this connection between art and science. I mean, just go to the right person and approach the persons. It's also
intimidating
intimidating
process,
and difficult. Yeah. So yeah, there is a lot of work to be done. This is it.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think we could close it there. I mean, just a couple of reflections. I mean, speaking as a scientist, so yes, don't be intimidated. Also, don't only email once. You know, be persistent, because it's very easy to miss things. Also, even very interesting things. And I think it really is important. I mean, I think what scientists are very good at is articulating the nature of a problem. And I think what in the world of climate science, I think we've done really, really well is describe the problem of climate change and all the various ways that it is going to affect the world in mostly negative ways. I think what scientists are really poor at doing is kind of articulating a positive vision for the future, and or any kind of vision. We're not trained to develop or speak about visioning, and what the world needs in climate change is a positive vision of the future. And I think that's what's missing to really catalyze action. And so, from my perspective, I think art actually has a much better handle of how to do that. And so I think it is really important to continue to build those connections and to take the things that scientists are good at and translate into the things that artists are good at, and use that as a way of articulating the way we want society to look in the future, and a way that would not be the catastrophe that you get from reading the IPCC reports, but rather something a little bit more positive. And yes, I mean, climate change will absolutely reshape the world, but there is also absolutely an opportunity to intervene in that reshaping and to direct the world towards a more positive outcome than otherwise would be the case. So thank you everyone for coming. I don't know if Lila, you want to say any last words or just leave it there. I would invite you all to check out the schedule and come to other events both this week as for the remainder of the conference, and also there'll be a series of panels later in June associated with the Thinking Aloud series that this is the first of. And so with that, thank you for coming, and I'll pass it to Anna to close the session.
Awesome. Round of applause, everyone. I can't applaud because it sounds terrible with the mic right here, but thank you so much, panelists, for making the time to share your insights online or in person. We appreciate you being here. And those of you on Zoom, you stayed pretty quiet here today, but we appreciate you as well. And thanks for your kind of applause in the Zoom and some comments I see coming in now. So folks, we will be closing up that space. As Damon said, we invite you back tomorrow morning, plenty more activities starting at 10 a.m. Otherwise, you can share this conversation, which is already available on our YouTube channel. Check out Concordia University Fourth Space, and you'll find it there already. You're welcome to hang out in the space until 6 p.m. if you're here with us. Otherwise, we're closing up our